everyone, it's Asha. Welcome back to Reading with Asha. For today's video, I'm going to be going ahead and giving you guys some fall book recommendations. These are all books that I have read and loved and would specifically pick out for the fall season. I have 8 that definitely give me fall vibes and reasons that I would specifically read them in fall. And then I also have, I think, 3 or 4 books that you could really read at any time of the year, but fall and winter are my favorite kind of time to read them because I'm a mood reader. The kind of book that I like to read depends on the weather it is outside. So I will share those with you when we get to them, but I don't want to go into complete, total, crazy detail about every single one of these books just because it would be a super long video then, but I'll kind of introduce the book a little bit and tell you why I think it's a fall kind of book and that type of thing. So let's get right into it. Okay, the first book that I have here is one of my all-time favorites. It's The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stefan Chbosky. I don't know if that's how you pronounce his name, but this is also a movie that has Emma Watson in it and Logan Lerman, I think. I really love him. He plays the main character and he does a really great job at doing it. I actually read this after I watched the movie. This is a really good kind of coming to age story. A lot of times when I think about fall, I think about back to school season, and coming to terms with everything that's going on in your life at that time. So I felt like this is a really good book to read during fall because there's also a lot of fall things that are going on, like football games and parties, high school things kind of, because I think it's his freshman year of high school and all of his friends are seniors that he makes friends with, and it's just really, really sweet, and it's a pretty deep story, but it's written so beautifully. And this story is actually written in the form of letters, like entries from Charlie, who's our main character. So yeah, he's just getting into high school, kind of navigating everything, makes friends, but they're gonna go away to college, and he has some inward issues that makes it kind of hard for him to make friends, but he's just so sweet, and I really, really like it. And if you watch this movie, I would highly recommend reading the book, and if you haven't watched or read either, I would recommend doing both or one or the other. This is one of my 5-star reads and I absolutely love it. Okay, next up is a super cute little middle grade book. So middle grade meaning on the scale of like Percy Jackson or Harry Potter. It's kind of those books that you can read when you're like 11 and up, and I found this one and thought that the cover was so cute. It's the Mistwick School of Musicraft. I didn't necessarily think that the writing in this story was insane. I just thought it was super cute. It's about a girl who's always dreamed of going to the Mistwick School of Musicraft, and basically it's got a whole magical element. Not necessarily Harry Potter vibes, because I feel like Harry Potter is a lot more complex, but if you just want a really cute little middle grade book, it has big words, it has some pictures in it. I think it's super cute. But if you like this kind of book, I just wanted to throw this in here because I know that there's people who have a soft spot for these kind of books. It gives you a feeling of nostalgia, and yeah, I think it's good for the fall season because of that magic, like witchy aspect. So next up is one that I feel like is getting a little more popular now. I think I read this maybe like 3 or 4 years ago. This is actually the book that got me back into reading. It's Then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell. This is a thriller and it is pretty disturbing. I remember reading it and being pretty disturbed, and I'm also very sensitive, but I think Haley Pham recently read it and said that it was really disturbing to her too, and I was like so glad that I'm not the only one because I'm like, maybe I'm just being too sensitive. No, it's super interesting. It's about a girl who disappears. Her name is Ellie, and then her mom's kind of like navigating life without her. I don't know how many years later it is, but they don't know what happened to the girl. They still don't know what happened to her. And then the mother, Laurel, meets this guy, and his daughter looks exactly like her missing daughter, Ellie. I did not guess the twists and turns of this book whatsoever. I read this book super fast because it was so good, but it was also twisted. So I just felt like I had to know what happened because it probably gave me anxiety. The reason I put this in here though is because obviously it's spooky season. Thrillers I think are the best to read during the season of fall and spooky season October. So I'd highly recommend this if you want a good thriller, and I don't think you'll guess what's gonna happen. I don't know anyone who's read it who has like other booktubers, but yeah, it was really well written, and I know that this author has a ton of other books, so if you really like this, you could also look into other books by her. Okay, next up I have another thriller that I actually read last fall. This is The Guest List by Lucy Foley. I feel like this is also a pretty short book, and Lucy Foley is kind of known for writing thriller books. She also wrote The Paris Apartment, which was really popular. I didn't read it because I pretty much knew the entire plot and what happened because I feel like I watched a lot of people talk about it, and it was really popular, but if you haven't read it, I would recommend it because it's super popular. thriller. This one is really cool though because it's based on a remote island, I think in Ireland, and it's basically the bride, the plus one, the best man, the wedding planner, and the bridesmaid, and then all of them have a secret. It's like multiple point of views, so it flips back and forth between everyone. One of them is a murderer because someone ends up dying during this wedding on this like creepy little remote island where there's just so many weird little things going on. It's so spooky, but also I didn't find this one to be super disturbing, so if you want to read a thriller but you're like scared because maybe it makes you paranoid or something like that, I felt like this one was a good option because it's not super graphic, it's not really that disturbing. I mean, there's obviously a murder scene, but it's not overly gruesome. So yeah, I would recommend this one. I really liked this one when I read it last fall. I gave it a 5 stars. I couldn't believe the ending. And her other book, which is called The Hunting Party, is actually going to be on my TBR for fall this year. So super excited about that. Wait and see for that video what I put on my TBR. Next book that I'm going to recommend you to read, if you haven't read it already, I'm sure you've maybe heard of it somehow because it's by John Green, who is the author of The Fault in Our Stars and Paper Towns, which, oh my gosh, maybe I should read Paper Towns this fall because I've had that forever. I love John Green. He is a young adult author. His books to me are so easy to read, but they're also deep. Like, they hold really like deep messages, underlying messages, and so I really like that. And it's about a kid, his name is Miles Halter, and he goes to this boarding school and he makes friends with a girl named Alaska Young and this boy whose name is the Colonel, or that's just kind of like what they call him, his nickname. And it's super interesting because Alaska is such an interesting, deep, complex character. This book, I don't want to say is spooky because it's not spooky, but it is very mysterious. That's why I think it's a great book to read in fall. And if you've never read anything by John Green, I would highly recommend starting with this book. It's super short, easy to read, and there's also, I think that there's a Hulu series, and I found the series to be pretty good. It's obviously not spot on from the book, but I think it was done well. Next up, I have a pretty popular book. You've probably heard of it. It's A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. I read this one last fall because it's highly recommended by every booktuber and everyone who likes thriller mystery. And my favorite part about this book is obviously it's a murder mystery book, but it is a YA version, so it's not super graphic and not really scary or anything like that. So if that's your kind of vibe, the letters are super big and there's just so many like emails and back and forth that's going on that it's just really easy for your brain to process. And this is about a girl who gets murdered allegedly by her boyfriend, and the case kind of gets closed. Nobody investigates it any further, and then Pip decides to re-examine it for her senior project, and then she figures out all of this stuff that basically the FBI didn't figure out, and she goes in depth. And the plot twist I felt like was pretty crazy. I could not have expected what was coming. I did not know. I didn't figure it out during the book, and I thought that this was super good. And then there's also 2 other books in the series that I heard are both really good too, and I'm really excited to hopefully read the second one this fall. But if you're looking for a little murder mystery, not gruesome or graphic, I mean, there's probably like a couple of scenes that will make you feel a little bit on edge. It's really interesting and easy to follow, and I just feel like perfect for spooky season. Next up, I have a graphic novel. This is Pumpkinheads by Rainbow Rowell. I mean, just look at this graphic novel. I will literally just show you a couple of pictures. It's based at a pumpkin patch, corn maze, all of that fun stuff. So that's kind of why I feel like it's a good little fall graphic novel to read, just because all the imagery and illustrations are just, they're so fall. They have to wear like these overall outfits with plaid shirts, and it's super easy to read because it's a graphic novel. Here's another picture. Yeah, I mean, this was cute, easy to read. If you're wanting to get into a graphic novel for the fall time, I would highly recommend reading this one. You could even just go into Barnes & Noble or any bookstore that you go to and find it and read it while you're there. Like, sit down for an hour, get a coffee or something at the Barnes & Noble cafe, and then enjoy this. And it's got so many good fall vibes. The last book that I'm going to recommend that I feel like gives off strong fall vibes is Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. I absolutely loved this book so much. It started off a little bit slow for me when I read it, but I ended up getting into it and loving it so much. It's kind of a story about afterlife slash like being a ghost, but it's so cozy, and that's why it feels like fall to me, because you have the ghost aspect and the kind of paranormal aspect, but also it's so cozy because it takes place in like this tea shop. It's about a character, his name is Wallace, and suddenly he just is collected by a reaper who says that he's dead when he has like no recollection of it, and he's he's like watching his funeral back and all this crazy stuff that he has no idea what's going on. But the Reaper brings him to this tea shop where he meets Hugo. And Hugo is the person who helps them cross over to the afterlife, because that's kind of what they do at the tea shop. But the tea shop also has people and customers who come in who are not dead or ghosts or part of the afterlife. But there's other ghosts who live in the tea shop too, and a ghost dog. Wallace just kind of decides that he's not ready to let his life go, even though he was kind of a miserable, Scroogey kind of guy. But the whole message of the story is so cute. It'll make you laugh and it'll make you feel so warm inside. In the end also made me cry. It was so cute, so sweet, and I really love this book, and I read it last fall, and I would highly recommend you to read this one if you're looking for a good, just so cozy and warm and sweet book to read this fall. This is what I would recommend you. Now, for books that aren't necessarily books that you have to read in the fall, but to me, I like to read them either in the fall or the winter, I would recommend a couple of fantasy books for you. And one of them is not a fantasy book, but I will tell you about them, why I like them, why I think it has a fall vibe, I guess, and you can decide whether or not you want to get into fantasy this year or this fall. But the first book, of course, is going to be the Harry Potter series, but this is the second book in the series. The first one I'm loaning out to a friend right now, so I'm just showing you the second one, but I would recommend reading the first one first, obviously, and then you can continue to read the series if you like it. I think this one is so good because obviously it's about wizards, it's about witches, it's about magic, and going to this huge school. There's so much academia in all of it, and just there's like monsters and different things that are going on, and it's so fun to read and so interesting. It's also middle grade, so that means that it's geared for like 11-year-olds and even younger. So it's so easy to read, but it's also so beautifully written. I just love this series so much. So I would highly recommend the Harry Potter series if you want to get into a series this fall. I read this for the first time when I hadn't watched any of the movies. This was like 2 years ago. I hadn't watched any of the movies or read any of the books. I absolutely fell in love with the series, and I read the whole series. It's like 7 or 8 books in probably 2 weeks. So super easy to read, super good. Highly recommend. Next up, this book is not a fantasy book, but this is The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. The reason that I would recommend you to read this is because it's super fast-paced, short chapters, which Jennifer Lynn Barnes is kind of known for writing. She has a new series as well. I don't know if it's new or if it came out before this, but it's called The Naturals, and people are raving about it right now. I'm still deciding whether or not I want to read it, or maybe it will be too graphic for me. I don't know, but it's kind of like a murder mystery series, I'm pretty sure. This is about a girl who is like poor, living out of her car, and then suddenly someone comes to her school and tells her that she's inherited like billions of dollars, and she has to go to this house and meet the family who didn't get the inheritance that she got. And they're all like, what did you do to our grandfather? Like, why did you get this inheritance? And then the grandfather has left all these weird little puzzles and mysteries that they have to try to figure out throughout the book. I have no clue how Jennifer Lynn Barnes or any writer who writes fantasy or this like deep of mystery kind of game books, I don't know how they do it, because I feel like there's so many pieces that you have to put together. I just feel like it overwhelms me thinking about how they write it. It's a really good book, and there's so many little games and mysteries going on. I think it's cozy, it's easy to read, there's a little romance. Words are super big because it's YA, and I read the first 2 books, and I'm hoping to read the 3rd book this fall for sure because I really like this series. Alright, next up, you know I have to recommend A Court of Thorns and Roses, which I'm sure you've heard about somewhere. It's fairies, fairy smut, strong, female, beautiful, amazing, stunning lead character, fairy men who we can't talk too much about because this is just the first book. If you've been waiting to get into this series, this is your sign to do so. It's so good. So many fantastical elements about it. It's magic. It's otherworldly creatures. So that's why to me it's like giving fall, it's giving Halloween, spooky vibes, all that type of thing. I love this book series. I'm not going to even say too much about it because I'm sure you've heard about it somewhere on the internet in the booktube realm, but I love it so much. And then another one that you've probably heard about, even if you watched my last video, is Fourth Wing, which is another really good fantasy book. It's gonna be, I don't know if it's going to be more than 2 books, but there's a second book that's coming out in November, and it has dragons. It's also kind of a back to school type of vibe in academia because of the fact that they're at like a college. So I felt like that kind of plays into the aspect of why I would read this fantasy specifically in fall. And it's just dragons, and it's got such a strong female lead character who's looked at as so weak. Like, everyone should be so worried about her, and she's just so cool. So cool. I absolutely love it. But yeah, those are all the books that I would recommend for you to read this fall. I hope you liked this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up, subscribe down below. I will see you guys in the next video for my fall TBR, or maybe a read with me video, either or, because I know you guys love the read with me videos, so trust me, I will be posting a ton more. Maybe we can do some cute little cozy fall ones once it gets more cooler and I decorate my house for fall. Thank you guys so much for watching this video and supporting me, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!